Christopher Anderson claims to know a great deal about the Obamas' marriage. In fact, though he's never talked to Barack or Michelle and had no connection to Illinois politics, he's just published a book on the subject, filled with direct quotes, and that, given the subject matter, has drawn a whole lot of media attention.
Let me ask you, what did you learn that's different between the Clinton marriage and the Obama marriage?
You're right. Michelle delivered an ultimatum to her husband. If Barack couldn't find a way to pursue his political dreams and at the same time make more time for his family, then he would have to choose between the two. Explain those years and how this impacted the couple.
It was a fair assessment. I got to be honest, I enjoyed the book. I really did. I thought it was a fascinating portrayal. I learned a lot.
And joining me now from New York is Christopher Anderson. The book is called Barack and Michelle, Portrait of an American Marriage. When you're asked about reporting on conversations between Barack Obama and Michelle Obama when they're alone in a room, you've said, well, they told this to other people. But you put quotation marks around this, and you don't know exactly what was said. You're getting it secondhand at best, right?
Well, I have to say, first of all, you characterize this as a book that's digging for dirt, and boy, do I take issue with that. You know, the USA Today article on my book called it a glowing portrait of a rock-solid marriage, and that's what it is. I want to get that cleared up.
Well, it's not entirely glowing. We'll come back to that, but answer my question about the direct quotations.
Well, it's pretty damn positive. Well, the direct quotations come from them. You got to remember, these are people who have not been in the public eye for more than a few years,
right.
And they talked to their friends in Chicago, and those friends talked to me, and many of them on the record, and they said, this is what happened. That incident that you're describing in the beginning of the book, where they woke up in the middle of the night to the screams of Sasha down the hall, rushed her to the hospital, spent 72 hours with her there, and found out that she had spinal meningitis. You know, this is stuff that both Barack Obama and Michelle have talked openly about. So when I use an exciting narrative to describe the really horrendous situation they were in and how they were in and how they came through it, I think that's perfectly legitimate. You remember, this is my 29th book.
Right, but even to the point of putting quotation marks around a conversation that was repeated to you by someone who was not part of the conversation, which I, as an author, would not do.
Rock solid. I mean, this is not a textbook. This is a biography of a marriage, and I think it's perfectly legitimate. And I've been doing this for 40 years, you know, with Time magazine for many years, and this is my fourth book on presidential marriages.
Right.
No one has ever disputed a single important fact in any book I've ever written, and this general notion that you can't make a book exciting and interesting and at the same time accurate. Well, I mean, you know.
Let's go through some of the details in the book, and we'll get your response.
Okay.
Reverend Jeremiah Wright, big controversy during the campaign. The Obamas claimed they were not in church during his most extreme and fiery sermons, Goddamn America and all that. 77 investigative reporters tried to prove otherwise. Nobody could prove it. You say that the Obamas were, in fact, in church when Wright said some of these things. What's your proof?
Absolutely. He said them practically every time he gave us a speech. You know, Reverend Wright, and many journalists have said this who are part of the Chicago scene, said that he gave Chicago's African-American elite their weekly dose of militants. So, of course, he said he was there when he said these things.
But the evidence, you only cite unnamed churchgoers. You don't have a date?
Well, they're there. And I'll tell you one thing, the important thing about the book is that I do, in terms of Jeremiah Wright, is that I point out that they were indeed not there when Jeremiah made those famous statements that were videotaped and that got them in trouble. They were taking care of Sasha because she was still recovering from meningitis.
All right, let's talk about Bill Ayers, the one-time terrorist. You say that when Barack was writing his first memoir, that he sought advice from Ayers, who was an acquaintance in Chicago, and that he submitted the manuscript thanks to the help from the veteran writer Ayers. How do you know that?
There are several people on the record who say that in the book, and I might add CNN, in its own investigative report on the connection between Ayers and Barack Obama that was done for Anderson Cooper's show, said that indeed there was a closer relationship than the campaign said there was.
I'm not asking about how close the relationship was. I'm asking about the notion that Ayers actually helped Obama with his book.
Neither one of them deny it, and in fact, you know, there are definitely named sources in the book that point out the fact that there was a group of writers in Hyde Park, Chicago at the time, who had input on each other's writings. I definitely do not say he wrote Barack Obama's book.
Right.
Again, I'm putting up the accurate picture, which is that they knew each other. He helped a little bit, gave his opinions. That's all I'm saying, and in fact, he did not write Barack Obama's book. So again, you talk about the spin, and I don't like the fact that...
I didn't say that you said he wrote it. I quoted from the book. All right, Tony
Well, I know,
Resco,
but you're hinting.
I'm not hinting, I'm not suggesting, I'm not implying. Tony Resco, the convicted Chicago businessman who was a fundraiser for Barack Obama and a friend. The Obamas bought a strip of land adjacent to a Resco property. You say for $25,000. Actually, it was $104,000. But here's the thing. There was a phone call between Barack and Michelle that you quote again verbatim concerning Resco about whether they would buy the house near Resco's house. And you had Barack Obama saying, Tony really thinks it would be great for us. And Michelle says, I'm in. Again, how do you know that?
This is from sources close to them. They're named in the book. I have Abner Mikva, Newton Minow, a number of people who were with them at the time. They related what happened, and I'll tell you one thing. Barack Obama has said repeatedly it was a bonehead move on his part.
Yes,
he apologized for it. So again, once again, it's just merely clearing up the details of a controversial situation.
As you mentioned, you've written a number of other books. You've written about a lot of celebrities. For example, You wrote that Robert Kennedy had an affair with Jacqueline Kennedy. You wrote
Years
that Hillary
ago.
Clinton and Vince Foster had an affair. Obviously, in both cases, there was at least one dead person who couldn't respond to that. How is it that you make these allegations that no one else seems able to find?
Never said it. Never said they had an affair. I gave the opinions of people who were close to them in the situation. Now, we're not talking about Hillary Clinton, and that's the point about this book. We should rejoice that we do not have Bill and Hillary's personal life in the White House. We have a marriage that's admirable, that is a tremendous example, I think, for the country, and won't distract us from the important things that we have to address in the White House. And I think that is the point of this book. And Barack and Michelle Obama, in contrast to those other couples, have made the wise decision to be open about the tough times they've had in their marriage.
Yes, Barack Obama writes about it in his book.
Right.
And I will say this. A lot of news reports picked up from your book said that Michelle Obama had vetoed Hillary Clinton as a VP choice. But you didn't write that. You said that she had some input, that she sided with those who didn't think that Hillary should pick. So sometimes the reporting on this, kind of adds or embellishes a bit. But let me ask you this. I asked the White House for comment. White House officials did not want to comment on your book. When you were on CNN's American Morning, it was reported by the anchor that the White House had pulled a scheduled appearance by a senior administration official. So if the book is as positive as you say, why does the White House seem to so strongly dislike it?
Well, let's not dance about this. They pulled David Axelrod, and the reason they did it was because the book came out that day, and they really hadn't had a chance to pour over it. I'm sort of the stealth author, I will confess that. I fly below the radar, and that's why I get friends to talk before the White House or anyone can get them to clamp down. I think they'll be very pleased once they take the time to sit down and read the book to see that it's really a very positive book.
White House officials have since read the book, and they are not pleased. Is that because you report on things like Resco and Jeremiah Wright that they're simply not happy about?
Well, no. I mean, that's a minor part of the book. I think that you can't. This book was not written for the White House. It was written about this marriage, which I think is a tremendous, rock solid union, and it's a partnership in a way that past presidential marriages really haven't been.
All right. Well, I know you spent a lot of time on this. We appreciate your spending some time with us, Christopher Anderson. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for letting me clear it all up.